Scanning for audio.
Welcome to the Tin Dog Podcast for episode 3 of series 4 of Torchwood, broadcast on the 20th of July in the UK. And it's agenda a go-go down at good old Torchwood. Right, now, did anyone else get slightly annoyed by the whole this is how we do and say things in England, and this is how we do and say things in America? Now, I don't know about you, but there was a sitcom, well, a sort of sketch show in the 90s, and it had a recurring thing called the Bureau de Change, which was, well, a bureau de change in England, but it travelled around. It was an awful European soap where the same thing was said in about 4 different languages. It was apparently hilarious. Well, I remember it being funny anyway, and that's what that scene reminded me of. I suppose it's to be expected. But surely people can figure things out for themselves, can't they? Oh, maybe it's not. I suppose the English have got the advantage on that because we're exposed to so much American culture. And I did use the word American culture in a non-ironic sense. We know what an ATM is, and I'm sure people who watch Torchwood could figure out what a cash point was. And a mobile? Hell, the only time we've ever been confused by that sort of thing, well, that was when Ace called it a hand comm. Moving on, I think. You see, I've got a page full of notes. Now, is this the NHS's good agenda? Is this part of Russell's being English is so much better? I know he's Welsh. The man couldn't be more Welsh. Let's just move on. Now, literally, in this episode, the plot actually thickens. And yes, like most times when I've been reviewing Torchwood, my notes make no sense when I come to them a few days later. I've got things like the bloke from Seinfeld, hardly in it, triangle mobile phone, ! Adipose story, another RTD, fave of info dumping. Ah, right, I know what that is. That's the adipose story that was in Doctor Who, where rather than tell us what's happening, we get invited to a nice little chat, where we all get sat down in a room and get told what's going on. And that's kind of what I thought was going on here. Yes, the whole pain management storyline now makes a lot more sense to me. And the whole diseases going from strength to strength again now makes a lot more sense. People will still have the diseases, they just won't die from them. Does that mean they'll still destroy them? There will be no relief of death. You do get the feeling that a lot of these things were discussed in the original, all the writers sitting in one room and working out exactly what would happen if everyone was made immortal. And you do keep wondering who came up with this nitty-gritty storyline. Yes, Phi-Corp at the moment seems to be the people behind the big bad, but it was pointed out, just because they're making a profit out of the whole thing, and possibly knew it was happening, does that mean they actually organised it. Alien intervention was mentioned once, and I suspect for the first time. And that's fine. We have to keep our finger in there, but I'm still not completely convinced it is alien. It might be alien technology that's been used. But if it's just Phi-Corp, a company trying to get cash out of having, well, customers that go on forever, it's just that, well, the logic doesn't quite seem to fit. If you're so powerful that you can organise this kind of event on a global stage, it's not going to be about the money. Or is it? Is it about creating an infinite amount of, well, customers? That's quite boring. As a storyline, it's dull. as a motivation, it ranks with the sun makers. Again, if you own the entire planet, what's the point of making profit? What do you do with it? Money doesn't literally exist. It only exists because we all agree that it exists. It's an illusion that we all buy into, and we buy into it with such an extent that we're willing to go with it. But on such a global scale, it's going to show up. It's going to be... Anyway, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's got to be something else. It's that whole Tom Baker's Doctor. Once you've got the universe, what do you do with it? Getting back to this page full of notes, yes, the whole babies without faces, that's going to give you the creeps, yeah. And of course, yes, I'm just going to say, I bet RTD put that line in. It would be lovely, truly lovely, to have one of those, the Benjamin Cook writers books that came out last year. The one where Russell talks about all his decisions, to know exactly where all the ideas came from and who did what. I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. So, on Agenda Watch this week, we've got the NHS is good, and we also have the gay stroke safe sex agenda. Well, there you go. Who would have thunk it? Also, on the RTD front, we have our first hinting at an anti-church leaning. The whole soulless people with the masks that looked like they were cast-offs from V for Vendetta. Yeah, those... Everyone knows about RTD's apparent... Well, let's say he's on the same bandwagon as a certain Mr. Dawkins, and that's perfectly acceptable. But it is interesting that you can get away with that sort of thing in England so much more in drama than you can in America. Now, I know it's a pay-for-view or subscription channel or whatever you want to call it. So you're going to have a certain sort of audience that have got certain sort of ideals and thoughts. So it's a lot easier to say these things to a certain audience who are already willing to listen. But either way, it's impressive that such a storyline is going to turn up in America. Because let's face it, this Torchwood truly is American. Now, of course, the main thing you have to discuss when talking about this story as a whole is Bill Pullman's arc. And I'm going to use the word arc and not apologise this time. What do we know? Well, we know that he says he didn't know about the event, so he was expecting to die. And what's with that scary big woman? Did you touch him? That was just weird and wrong. Now, I know from last week and this week we're supposed to have sympathy for this guy. We're supposed to have him developing as a character. But that's just not going to happen. Oh, I've got a question. What happens if you push someone into a furnace and they are completely burned? You're not going to get some sort of Terminator thumbs up thing. They're just going to be completely atomized. The skin will be destroyed. Everything will be burnt. Okay, they may feel the pain longer, but they will not be anything of them left anymore. That's death. So if you need to get rid of someone, it's furnace. Yes, molten metal. The ideal way of getting rid of people. Just do that. There you go. Moving on. Point 2 about Bill Pullman. He's a willing puppet of Phi-Corp because he changes what he's calling for. First off, he's changing for free medical care, i.e. the NHS that we have in the UK. But then he starts saying what he wants is a free market approach to healthcare, whereas anyone can buy whatever they want, for it is the American way. Free healthcare becomes free market healthcare. Now, is it me, or does this just seem like not even a parallel plotting? It actually seems like a sort of MacGuffin or red herring plotting. It doesn't actually have that much bearing on the main story arc, i.e. what happened, how can you end it, should you end it, and look at the effect it's having on people. I know look at the effect it's having on people is basically what the whole story is about. But the Bill Pullman thing... Do you remember when they used to have Doctor Who on in the UK? possibly you're too young. But what they used to do was they would take a 6-episode story and then edit it down into an hour and a half, and then show that at Christmas or something like that. An omnibus edition. Not an omnibus in the sense that they chopped off the beginnings and endings of each episode. No, this was an omnibus in the sense that it was tightly edited and there was big sections missing. If there was an omnibus version of Torchwood, could you get rid of Bill Pullman's entire story arc and still have basically the same story? This episode for me was just about a series of connections. You've got Jack and the barman, Gwen and her family, the doctor and Rex, the blogger and her sister, and it's probably just me. I mean, there's some great lines, stuff that of course will appear on ribbons at Gallifrey, not the face. That's how it's done these days. But I can't help but keep coming back to Phi-Corp, and the logic just not working for me. Perhaps I'm buying into the story far too much, and of course the woman in the red dress. She's playing the part magnificently. She's sinister, she's scary, but she's still quite evidently human and simply into marketing. My dislike of people in marketing just proves that this is what she's like. I genuinely don't think she's an alien. I just think she's out for herself. Bit more modern. That's fine by me. Look, I'll go away and come back very, very soon with a review of either, the next episode of Torchwood, or more likely, The Sunmakers, because I'm just enjoying it so much. Tom Baker's great. It's so much better than I thought it would be. And I'd rather that wasn't a catchphrase. But these last few DVDs are proving wonderful to watch. Right, fading away now. Be seeing you.
You have been listening to the Tin Dog Podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all trademark of the BBC. No infringement is intended. Contact us at tin-dog@hotmail.co.uk.